I want to thank Secretary of the Treasury John Snow for being here today. I also want to thank my friends Senators Connie Mack and John Blow for agreeing to head a group of citizens who will be exploring ways to simplify the tax code. I believe this is an essential task for our country. It's a task that will treat our taxpayers more fairly. A simple code will make it easier on the taxpayers, but it's an important task in order to make sure the economic growth we are seeing in the United States continues forward. Today we had a very positive set of numbers that come out to show that more and more Americans are finding work. 159,000 new jobs were added in December. That doesn't include the revisions from previous months, and that's positive news. And the fundamental question is, how can the administration and the Congress continue to make changes so to keep this economy growing, to make sure we're the best place in the world to do business? Today I'm going to Detroit to talk about legal reform. These fine distinguished citizens will be taking a good hard look at the tax code and coming up with recommendations as to how to make sure the tax code encourages economic vitality and growth. It seems like to me the tax code today discourages economic vitality and growth when you spend billions of hours filling out the forms. And so I want to thank you all for taking on this important job. I've told the members, the former senators and members of this committee, that I am firm in my desire to get something done. We're going to take their work and we'll go to the Congress and say, let's work together to achieve something very constructive for the American people. And so thanks for taking this on. These are distinguished citizens of our country, and I'm proud you're here. Thank you.
Look forward to doing it.
Yeah, you'll be doing a good job. Let me answer some questions. Hunt?
Mr. President, former National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft had a gloomy assessment about Iraq's elections. He said that they would probably deepen the conflict, increase divisions between the Shiite and Sunni Muslims, and that Iraq would slip into an incipient civil war. Do you share those concerns?
Quite the opposite. I think elections will be such an incredibly hopeful experience for the Iraqi people. Remember, these are people that live in a society where if they didn't toe the line of the leadership, they'd be tortured or killed or maimed. And all of a sudden, a new way of life is being introduced into Iraq. A chance for people to express their beliefs and their opinions. I believe democracies can take hold in parts of the world that have been condemned to tyranny. And I believe when democracies take hold, it leads to peace. That's been the proven example around the world. Democracies equal peace, and that's what we're trying to achieve in this administration. Steve Holland. Yeah, there you are.
General Metz says he can't guarantee that every Iraqi who wants to vote will be able to because of security. Can there be in the legitimate election if not everybody's able to vote?
14 of the 18 provinces appear to be relatively calm. 4 of the 18 provinces are places where the terrorists are trying to stop people from voting. And the reason they're trying to stop people from voting is because they understand that democracies stand in the exact opposite to what they believe. These are people who want to try to impose their will on people. These are people just like the Taliban, just like Osama bin Laden, who have this dim vision of the world that said, if you do not agree with us, then you're of no count. And they're trying to stop people from voting. And the job of the United States military is to do the best job we can to give every citizen the best chance they can to vote and to participate. Democracy is hard. Our own country's had a history of kind of a bumpy road toward democracy. And we'll do the very best we can. But what is important is that the Iraqi people, for the first time, have a chance to vote. And it was hard leading up to the Afghan elections, as you remember. There was a lot of talk about how somebody was going to get killed and they couldn't vote. And sure enough, when people were given a chance, millions of people showed up. And the first voter was a woman in a country where women had been savaged by the former government run by the Taliban. So I know it's hard, but it's hard for a reason. And the reason it's hard is because there are a handful of folks who fear freedom. And the job of the world, those of us in the world who desire for there to be peace, is to be aggressive in the spread of freedom, is to stand with those brave citizens in Iraq who want to vote. And that's exactly what we will do. Go ahead, follow up.
Are you worried about citizen participation? You were talking to President Mubarak earlier.
Well, I want everybody to vote. And I understand that parts of the Sunni area are being targeted by these killers. And their message is, if you vote, we'll kill you. But the real message is that we can't stand democracy. And, if the free world steps back and lets these people have their way, it'll be we can't stand democracy here, and then we can't stand democracy there. And we'll never address the root causes of terror and hatred, which is frustration caused by tyranny. This administration firmly believes that if people are given a right to express themselves in the ballot box, in the public square, and through a free and open press, it'll lead to peace. If we step back and allow for tyrannies to exist and people not to be free, the world our children will grow up in will be a hostile world. And this is a big moment for the Iraqi people. It wasn't all that long ago that a lot of people said Iraqi people never vote at all. And I think it's constructive now. We're beginning to worry about the size of the turnout. Something I was worried about right here 2 months ago. The size of the turnout. But the positive and incredibly amazing development, when you take a step back and look at history, is that Iraqi citizens will actually be allowed to go vote. And they will elect an assembly. And I think one of the things, Steve, you ought to be looking at is the nature of the assembly. Who gets elected? And that's what we're certainly going to be looking at, because this assembly will then be deciding the constitution of the country of Iraq. And I look at the elections as a historical marker for our Iraq policy. It is an interesting point. And we look forward to working with the new government that comes out of these elections. Yeah, John.
I just followed that up on a couple of things. You said, look at the assembly. Are you concerned that maybe the Sunnis won't vote enough, and that the Sunnis will not be well represented in the assembly? And are you concerned, as Secretary Rumsfeld is sending his retired four-star general over, are you concerned about our military policy in Iraq that it's not doing enough to control the insurgents?
Oh no! Look, I think what you're beginning to see is an assessment of how to make sure our policy dovetails with the elections and the post-election period. You see, our policy all along has been, we'll help these people get to the elections, and there will be elections. And then, once the elections take place, we look forward to working with the newly constituted government to help train Iraqis as fast as possible so they can defend themselves. See, part of a successful strategy is one that says there will be elections and the political process will be going forward, but one in which the Iraqis assume more and more responsibility for their own security. And that's precisely why the assessment team is going to Iraq, to make sure that at this historic moment in the history of Iraq, there is a focused, determined strategy to help the new government and the new government to stand up the forces necessary to defend themselves. Because ultimately the success in Iraq is going to be the willingness of the Iraqi citizens to fight for their own freedom.
So you're not dissatisfied?
I think we're making great progress. We're having elections on January the 30th. It's going to be an historic moment. I suspect if you were asking me questions 18 months ago and I said there's going to be elections in Iraq, you would have had trouble containing yourself from laughing out loud at the president. But here we are at this moment. And it's exciting times for the Iraqi people. And it's so exciting, there are some who are trying to intimidate people from going to the polls. And I appreciate, listen, our military is doing great work over there.
And the Sunnis?
Well, I talked to President Yawar the other day. He's a Sunni. I said, how's your campaign going? he said it's going fine. He's out there trying to convince people to vote for him. There's Sunnis throughout the different tickets and slates. And, we, of course, hope everybody votes. And our job is to try to provide as much security, along with the Iraqis, to give people a chance to express their will. And no doubt about it, there are people trying to kill people who want to vote. And they make it clear, if you vote, we'll kill you. But it's very important to understand why they're doing that, John. And they're doing that because the thought of a democracy in that part of the world is the most frightening thing to the terrorists. They cannot stand the thought of freedom in their midst. And there's a reason, because free societies are societies that actually listen to the will of the people. The people get to decide the course of the history of their country, not a few tyrants who are willing to use brutality in order to set the direction of a country. And we're going to stand with those who love freedom. And we'll stand with those who want to vote. Thank you all very much.